Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing details. Today we are discussing the real deal. This is not the modern Jaeger-LeCoultre tribute to deep sea. This is the real 1959 to 1962 deep sea diving alarm. And before I talk about the specs, the tech, and the physical facts of the model, let's focus on history, on why this watch is important. The 1950s witnessed a boom in both amateur and military diving activities. And in order to support these new clients, luxury watch brands as large as Omega and Rolex and Breitling took the plunge, so to speak, to supply dive-suitable watches. Smaller companies also got into the dive watch business, including Zenith, Eterna, and of course Blancpain and Jaeger-LeCoultre. And whereas most of the dive watches produced for this market featured some sort of a rotating bezel to act as a dive time reference, it was Jaeger-LeCoultre that proposed the idea, later followed by Vulcain with its nautical, to use an alarm as the means of limiting dive time. And of course, Jaeger-LeCoultre in 1950 had launched its own Memovox or wrist alarm series, so this was an adaptation of something for which the company was already well known to a new purpose. The watch was built in 1,061 pieces from 59 to 62. About half of them, 500, were constructed in the first model year of 1959. Now, there were two different versions. There was the LeCoultre dial version, and you can see it features a matching LeCoultre caseback that was built for the American market, which was the primary target market for this watch. In the US market, the reference again was 8184, and of the 1,061 examples completed, approximately 80% of them were for the US market, and 20% were Jaeger-LeCoultre branded for the world market, primarily Europe. The watch, of course, that you see here is a wonderful survivor. And internally, this is a watch that is as beautiful as it is externally. The only aspect, and I want to call this out immediately, that is not strictly original, is this handset. This is a good-looking, older tritium loomed handset, but the original handset for here would have been baton style or it would have been syringe. This is the one thing that's not original outwardly, and that can be replaced when the watch goes back to Jaeger-LeCoultre, as I sent them my E857 70s Snowdrop Memovox, and all the parts that had to be replaced were replaced with OEM new old stock. So this is not something that can't be rectified. What you can never remedy is a beat on watch, and this one is not that. It is beautifully preserved. So let's talk about what you're getting. The watch in steel is 39.5 millimeters in diameter, which made it quite large for its time. That's as measured at the outer outcroppings of the bezel. It's 14 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, it is 48 millimeters with a 19 millimeter spacing between the lugs. It would have seemed huge back in the late 50s when 33 to 36 millimeters was men's size for watches, and Vacheron even built some in the 31-32 millimeter range, so almost 40 was quite large then, although today a lady could easily wear this. It's short enough lug to lug and it's light enough on the wrist that this could be a wonderful vintage play for him and for her. Those who have not seen my wrist before, I just remind you my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference to give scale. The watch sits on a newly acquired JLC factory pin buckle. We wanted to get the proper brand pin buckle for this, and it has a matching Jaeger-LeCoultre OEM factory strap. It has matte large rectangular scale alligator leather on one side and medium rectangular scale gator on the other side, with a sheer cut side showing the layers of leather and a monotone stitch calfskin on the bottom. Again, a brand new factory strap. The case shows marks of wear. You can see there are some dents, there are some dings, and there is some evidence of refinishing. What there is not is massive damage or excessive refinishing. This is a watch that is still largely original, as most of the metal volume remains pronounced, and elements that usually diminish with time, such as the expanding bevel on the lug shoulder and the squared off end to the lug, those are still well represented. You can see end on, the lugs are still symmetrical and full. From side to side, you can see that the lugs are still shapely. They hold their original form. Those bevels remain well defined. You can even see a little bit of the original contrast between the satin finished flank of the case and the polished lug hoods. So this is very well preserved. The watch would have been carefully owned and minimally refinished. Not perfect, mind you, but better than most most 50s and 60s dive watches, which tended to get beat on, diminished, discarded, and lost to history. So this is not just a survivor, it's a really good one. The crowns are original unsigned, that's period, and then we have a bezel that is lacquered with its calibrations, and again, it does not rotate. That was never the thing with the deep sea diving alarm. You use the Memovox alarm to time your dive. But what I should mention is that these lacquered bezels often get destroyed over time, and to find one in condition like this, it's an exceptional find. The plexi is period correct. I would not swear on my mother's grave that this is the original plexi from almost 60 years ago, or at this point, I mean, if it's 1959, it's 60 years plus. So this is a crystal that is correct. It's just, in my opinion, a newer piece. This watch, of course, having a dial that is spotless. You can see all the individual sectors completely bereft of marks, oxidation, water damage, or contact evidence from bad watchmaking performed. You can see that the script on the center dial is beautifully preserved, and we do have a reloomed index that represents the setting mechanism for the alarm, and it features an alarm that can be set to a tolerance of about 5 minutes. It is loud enough to hear on the surface, but it's really designed to conduct its sound most efficiently underwater, and you're going to hear what I mean by that. It has a throbbing cricket-like sensation on the wrist. The alarm will sound for longer than that if you wind it more. I just didn't. The crown up at 2 o'clock is used to wind the alarm as well as to set the alarm time. The crown down at, well, let's call it about 3:50 is used to set the watch and to wind the watch. Inside we have the movement K815, which was launched in 1956. It is a bumper or hammer automatic, and when you shake it in your hand, you can feel the hammer bouncing between its two spring stops. It beats away at a very vintagey 18,000 vibrations per hour, so the seconds hand chugs along like it's some kind of an old pocket watch. It's the 17-joule US model, though there's no reduction in accuracy or quality between US and European variants of the movement, and it has a 45-hour power reserve that's energized by that wonderfully charismatic bumper. 100 meters water resistant, the E857 reference for the world variant meant étanche or water resistant, but do not consider a vintage watch like this water resistant. The 100-meter figure is for historical reference only. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.